The IEM 11 Katowice finals was a best-of-5, whereas the standard format for final series is best-of-3 in Counter-Strike and has been for basically, well, let's think, we're talking about more than a decade and a half, depending on which tournaments we're talking about. But especially in CSGO, obviously best-of-3, because we use single elimination, has been the prevailing format. Now, I thought this final was very entertaining. I actually think that the fact that we haven't had that many best-of-5 finals on the biggest level is something that's lacking. I would like there to be more. I mean, okay, we had Katowice the last couple of years. We had the first 3 seasons of ESL Pro League. I mean, it used to be called ESEA ESL Pro League, but it's just ESL Pro League now because ESL bought ESEA. We had the EPL Invitational Dubai final in, I think it was around autumn of 2015. We had the Gfinity Champion of Champions around a similar point of time. We had some smaller tournaments that had best-of-5 finals. We had StarLadder seasons 12 and 13. We had the Global Esports Game Show Cup, that one that took place in was it Lithuania? Latvia, one of those. I think Lithuania maybe. We had Gfinities in 2015, which were, some of them had the big teams at them, but there were smaller size events in general. And obviously last year we had Gfinity EGX, which is the one where it was Mouse Sports, and Envious in the final. And we had seasons 7, 8, and 9 of CEVO Professional Offline League, where 2 of them were run by MLG, and then the 9th one was run by Gfinity, actually. So, first and foremost, the main reason why I'd like to have best-of-5 finals, I'll forget the abstract conceptual stuff about formats, etc., and just say, first and foremost, from watching all these best-of-5 finals I've just listed, they have produced some fantastic matches. In fact, a lot more really good finals with best-of-5 finals than people would expect. Now, first and foremost, I'm talking about when it's at the elite level. This is a key detail. When you have a really huge 250k or more tournament with most of the best teams in the world attending, then you have a best-of-5 final. In more cases than not, so far in CSGO history, the best-of-5 final has been really good and arguably better than a best-of-3 would have been. Let's go through some of them. So we had ESL Pro League Season 1. That was the one where Cloud9 made their first international final. First international final properly in Europe, not just an ESEA season. And they played against Fnatic there. If you remember, that's the one where Cloud9 won the first map narrowly, and then Fnatic came back from that. And there were all these close maps that were amazing. Everything except Cash basically was really close. And Fnatic managed to win in incredible fashion, and that was part of the narrative that helped elevate Fnatic back up again when it looked like they were dipping down with losses to TSM, etc. Then we had ESL Dubai. Now, this was the one where TSM played Virtus.pro, TSM being the Danish team, in the final, and that was a full best-of-5 series, all 5 maps. An incredible series. These two teams had really deep map pools. They could really go blow for blow, and it was one of the great rivalries, still is to this day, actually. If you look at the core, TSM's obviously Astralis now, and Virtus.pro still Virtus.pro. This was a fantastic match. The way the 5th map ended, really, really high-level Counter-Strike. We had the Gfinity Champion of Champions, which, if you remember, was the little 4-team tournament where they invited 3 of the Gfinity champions. They invited Envious, Fnatic, and Virtus.pro, and then they put NIP in there because NIP historically are champions, but they actually hadn't won a Gfinity at this point in time. And that was where it was a 4-team tournament, single elim, and every match was best-of-5. Now, in the final there, that was actually a key match for the Envious guys because they had never actually beaten the Fnatic core in an offline best-of-3 or best-of-5 series. You remember, the only one they'd won was the one where they got the forfeit from Fnatic in the major, DreamHack Winter 2014. So even though Envious had won a bunch of tournaments since, had been the other dominant team, the other team vying in the Fnatic era to kind of make it their era. I mean, at one point in time, early on, I was actually thinking it was going to be called the Fnatic Envious era because they were both going back and forth in terms of winning titles. But Fnatic, crucially, always beat Envious in the best-of-3 series. So when these Envious guys, this was after the French Shuffle, were able to actually come along and beat Fnatic in this best-of-5 series. Sure, the tournament itself wasn't the biggest in the world, but this was a really key moment for them. This is the one, by the way, where on the last map it was Cash, and NBK drops like 30 because he was really in his prime as a support player at the time. And this really, for me, cemented okay, it's kind of the end of the Fnatic era here. Envious is definitely poised to be, along with TSM, one of the teams vying to win the next majors, etc. This was a really key moment in history, actually. And we had the ESL Pro League Season 2 finals. This was the one where Fnatic played Na'Vi, but it was the new Fnatic, so it was the Fnatic with Dennis instead of Pronax. If you remember, at this point, the Fnatic era has ended. Fnatic hasn't won a tournament in a couple of months. Fnatic had been going downhill, and those other top teams had either got to their level or overtaken them. And this is the new Fnatic, and they're back, and they're winning, and they won the DreamHack Winter already, their first big tournament. And who did they face in the final? Na'Vi. Well, as we know, Na'Vi would go on to be the other great team of that part of the era until Luminosity really got going and won the major next. So Na'Vi famously never beat Fnatic in an offline Best-of-5 series, and this is one where they really took them to the limit. This was a full 5 maps. This was some really close games. Na'Vi felt like they tilted, gave away some rounds, but it was an amazing series, and it just showed that new Fnatic was winning in a different fashion. They were winning with like more bullshit Fnatic rounds as opposed to more classic Fnatic just outplays individually or brilliant calls in the game. And this was a different style, but it was a great series in itself and really showed what was going to happen in the next few months with these teams, actually. We had obviously last year's Katowice final, which is where Fnatic played Luminosity. Now, Luminosity was into a big final now, but they'd also never beaten Fnatic in a big Best-of-X series. Now, this one was a 3-0, so you might say, well, that wasn't close. No, this had some really close games in it. Obviously, the Overpass game, at the time, you could make a case like Luminosity, if they weren't already, were only like a few weeks from being the best Overpass team in the world. Very, very good on it. They'd just beaten Na'Vi on it earlier. And now they go against Fnatic, and Fnatic somehow gets a win on it, even though Overpass and Train, that era of Fnatic, the Dennis era, was definitely not good maps for Fnatic, but they could somehow get wins on it in epic fashion. So even though it was a 3-0, it was one where Fnatic really did the hard way, like winning opponents' maps, and then 3-0'd them just to show, like, you know, we can fuck around and beat Fnatic and somehow win 3-0, even the win, not even, like, dominant in the traditional sense of great Counter-Strike teams. Obviously, ESL Pro League Season 3 finals. I mean, all the EPL finals were incredible that had it. This is where Luminosity Gaming was the best team in the world. They won the major, and they played G2. This was the rise of G2. This was the tournament where Shox and Scream just went mental, and they started asserting themselves as like, this is going to be the best duo in the world, or one of them, for a whole year, and they were. These were some of the best games we have ever seen in Counter-Strike. The absolutely phenomenal final. A lot of people would probably put this as their favourite final in history, actually, I think, because it was so entertaining. It was the last Inferno, and Inferno was the last map, and it went to overtime. The whole thing was incredible. The Dust 2 game is very underrated. What a crazy game. That was where some of the shit that Shox had to do to even get it to a 5th map. Incredible, incredible games. These were matches that took place at the highest level. Now, beyond that, there's not many that were elite, massive tournaments that were like bad Best-of-5s. In fact, I've pretty much gone through all the ones that were Best-of-5s there. None of them were bad. They were all really entertaining. They're all quite competitive, actually. There's not really blowouts there. Now, even when there are blowouts, first of all, the blowouts tend to happen when they're at the lower level tournaments, like a tournament that has like a couple of elite teams and a couple of not so elite teams, and maybe you get like the best team in the world play like the 6th best team or the 5th best team in the world. Yeah, well, there's already more of a disparity there, therefore naturally you should expect more blowouts. But even those blowouts actually have their own value in some sense, because they actually show the real difference between the teams. Like the problem is in a best-of-3, once you've done your 2 vetoes throughout it all, once you get to that last map, and if they just scrape the one map here, it can look closer than it is. You play a full best-of-5 and you have these blowouts, now you start to really see, oh right, there is a difference even between like the number 2 team and the number 5 team. So I'll give you a few examples. Envious played 3 best-of-5s against NIP in 2015 that really showed that Envious in that matchup dominates NIP. Even though at times NIP was like 3rd best, 4th best, 5th best team in the world, Envious was the 2nd best team in the world, 3rd best team in the world, and they just dominated NIP. At Gfinity Spring Masters 1, they lost the first map, Inferno 16-14, smashed the next 3 maps, won 3-1. Then they go to Starladder like a week later, Starladder 12. They get to the final, they had like 1-0 advantage because the upper bracket advantage. They'd already beaten NIP in the winners final anyway. And they just absolutely shit on NIP in this final. This was the one where NIP really started to tilt, and we're literally saying stuff behind the scenes like, you know, what do you do? Like they just push through smokes, like they just abuse force spies. Like how do you play against these guys? That's the point when they were really crying about how you had to about the OP pistols and the Tech 9, etc. Then you had the Gfinity Summer Masters 1 final between the two of them, which was kind of the end of the Shox era of Envious, and Envious won 3-0. And this was where NIP was still pretty good. Envious was on the way down, in theory. They were having all these issues. But Envious just showed again, this matchup, we own these guys. I mean, the only time they really lost the key one to NIP in that sense was that one when they were at Katowice of 2015, where they just got smashed in the semis in ridiculous fashion, like true Magic stuff, and they just didn't show up. Aside from that, these finals showed NIP is just a level below Envious when they play in their internal matchup, that is. Just dominance in that sense really helped build the mystique of Envious in that sense. You had Fnatic play VP in the final of G-Infinity Spring Masters 2. Now remember, VP's a team that could always go with Fnatic, could always take them close, and actually had beaten them a few times, like ESEA, for example. ESEA Season 17, they'd won a series off them. ESEA Season 18, they'd beaten them and took the title, actually. So they go head-to-head with them in this tournament. Fnatic 3-0s them. This was where Olaf was just like, I am God, and just was like completely dominating. He had a great cash game in this one. And again, by Fnatic, this is the true Pronax era Fnatic, winning 3-0, they were able to show, we can win on your maps as well. We can just beat everyone. We are the best team. This is our era. This is a real defining moment for me. Then you had the ones where Virtus.pro won their 2 CEVO titles in a row. They won Season 7 and Season 8. So they beat Na'Vi in Season 7. Now, Na'Vi was a very good team at the time. Admittedly, this is before Starix had really, like, clicked as the in-game leader. I think it was around the time that he was actually changing into that role. Actually, no, it was just before then, that's why. And they still had Flamey, it was in the lineup. But the problem is, Flamey was in the lineup because Starix hadn't become the in-game leader. He hadn't really developed as much, and he was just very up and down. So Na'Vi was good, but this was the tournament, actually, where VP switched Neo as the AWPer, and they were doing fantastic. He was probably the MVP of that tournament, and they just crushed Na'Vi in most of the games they played. Then the Season 8 ones was the one where VP played Mouse, and this is the key one because it kind of showed that it was the end of the God B era of Mouse. They had God B still, but they had Nico in the lineup now. Nico started to go ham. He had like a great map on one of them there. And then you had VP just clean him out 3-0 in the final, though. And Nex didn't really show up as much as he could have done. He did at times. And you could really see that where Mouse was headed, and obviously God B left after that point in time, was kicked, and so they went in a different direction. But VP again asserting like we're an elite level team, and yeah, okay, maybe we can't always beat Fnatic and win the major, or we can't always we just can't win all the tournaments, but we're an elite level team, and teams like a Mouse Sports, the level below us, can't fuck with us. That's what they showed at this tournament. So to me, those blowouts actually allowed the team to legitimately show dominance in a way that in itself was important and was significant and was entertaining in its own merit in that sense, to see what these teams could really do when they really put the pedal down and just topped out the car, and see what the fucking engine can do when they have a bunch of games to toy with these lesser teams. So why do I think that best-of-5 finals are good, and why should we have more of them? Well, first of all, it gives you a lot more chance to show your best play. Like, you don't just start the first map, maybe your pick, and have a slow first half, and then you're basically almost out of that map, you're facing an uphill struggle, then you're playing the opponent's map. Suddenly the series is done 2-0, and you're like, this could have been a great best-of-3 series, but they were just a couple of rounds off there, or this one player started too slow. Now, if you just don't turn up to the final, that's no, they started slow. No, there's no starting slow in best-of-3s. Like, you play 3 maps. Even if you got 16-0 on all 3 maps, you played over 45 rounds. You can play like 48, obviously. So you have no excuse whatsoever. So it's great in that sense. You get to play your better maps because there's only going to be 1 veto, and so you're going to get to your third best maps maybe in this series, assuming they ban your best map in like most scenarios that you often see. It actually tests your map pool more. You have to really be good all over the place. You can't just go here and then hope that you get a matchup that's like a best-of-3 where, we sort of play the same maps and ban the same maps, so I'll never have to play that map. That's like my second weakest. No, you might have to straight up play it. They might even push it to the front of the rotation, knowing they've got a minimum of 3 maps to be played, and see how you really play on it right out there in the front, in say like a final or something where it's really going to put you under pressure. You can't hide as much of your map pool in this scenario because you only have the 1 veto. I even want to throw in there that personally, if you want to add a little wrinkle that'll make Best-of-5 very unique, for the smaller tournaments, I wouldn't do this for majors personally, but for smaller tournaments like a Katowice, how about this? No vetoes. You play 5 maps and there's no veto, you just each pick until there's 5 done. Actually, wait a minute, how does that make any sense? Because there would be 1 left at the end. Okay, here's what you do. Same concept, but we're going to do the veto at the end. So the first 4 maps get picked, then you do 1 veto each, and there's 1 last map. Now, what's key about this, obviously, is if you're like average to good at a map that's their permaban, you can just pick it straight away. Okay, let's see how the best team in the world, like Astralis, let's see them play Cobblestone if they were playing Virtus.pro. And Virtus.pro can pick it first of all and go, you know what, fuck you, let's play this right now. I think that would be even more awesome, would add even more pressure, would really test people's map pool. And then at the end, there'll be 3 left that we all think's okay. Then we'll veto 1 each and have the decider in that sense. I think that would be pretty cool. I think that would add an extra, because the whole point is I'm trying to construct, as I did with my video about the Katowice format, which I'll link up here, I'm trying to construct formats which are really interesting and have competitive integrity, but add something different, have a twist on them, not a gimmick, but just add a different flavor and test you in a different way. So I think this would be a really cool way to add in best-of-5s and make them different from best-of-3s. I also think that a great thing about best of 5 finals is not only do they test your map pool, but they test not just the logic of how you pick and ban, but when you pick and ban. So it really tests, because the order of a best of 5 final is very key. Like, you want to put it so that you have, obviously, the first 3 maps usually give you your best chance to win. So how teams figure that out and where they mentally go in that sense, and what they're willing to give up to get a map later, is very interesting, actually. You see a lot about the teams and their psychology from how some of these go. I think some of them I've seen in the past were huge mistakes in that sense. Meanwhile, I think some people have played them masterfully in terms of the ones they've been willing to do. I actually think also, as I've said before, it allows dominance to be shown, but in this sense, because you're going to play at least 3 maps, you're going to play at least one of the opponent's maps. So if you can now 3-0, you show even more dominance, because you win on the map that they picked. It gives more chances. You can potentially win on 2 maps that they picked and really show your dominance in that particular sense, over more so than we have in the best of 3 series. I also think it takes the impact of a couple of close rounds out of the series as much. Because when you have that series, right, where I win my map like 16-10, then we have this second map where you win 16-11. So pretty close, but not, well, just close. Not super close, but not blowouts. And then the third map is this crazy decider game, and it's like you win 16-14. The team that has the 14 is always like, oh, if it wasn't for this one round and the force buy, and if we'd have just hadn't missed the spray into this guy's back. Now, if we'd then played a 4th map, and I'm the team that had the 14, and then you just beat me 16-13, sure, it's close again, but now I can't go, oh yeah, and I also want that force back by, and this pistol round over here, and I also, now they start to look ridiculous. Now you start to see, oh, now we've kind of got the distinction more than just that one map. Now, sure, you could take that argument and go absurdo attractum, etc., and just take it to ad infinitum and go infinitely out and go, oh, play best of 100 or whatever. Like, no, that would be ridiculous for logistically in terms of time and space and ability to play and endurance, etc. But in this sense, I think it makes it more conclusive who the better team was. That's the reason I like it in this sense. I also think that for majors, it would make majors more special if the final was best of 5. Like, in that sense, I actually would even make a case, maybe just only have them in majors be the best of 5 and all the other tournaments not be. Like, I don't think it's going to happen because it's Valve. So that's why I'd say to other tournaments, like, if I'm the people doing IEM, this is how to make IEM unique. Always have a best of 5 final. Now, the bad of having a best of 5 and my kind of responses to it. Okay, first and foremost, this is an important one. Players in general don't like them. Like, a lot of players complain, they say they don't want to do them, etc. So, okay, here's my solution to that. Because obviously as a spectator and as an analyst and expert, I like them personally. But I'll acknowledge, okay, I don't want players to feel like they're worn out all the time, or it's just too much, or it's hard to maintain focus that long. So let's keep them for special occasions. Like, let's only have them in 250k or more prize pool tournaments. I mean, like I said with the format video, it's all about making the scene diverse in a way that's interesting. Like, there's a logic and a metric and a validity to each style, but it tests something different. And so it's not just winning. You play 20 tournaments that are the same format and you win 10 of them and you're the best. Okay, yeah, the best format should be used for most tournaments, but I could see this logic and a value, as you have in some other sports, to having different formats at different points in time and different circuits. So I think it would be cool in that sense. As I said, I personally would like it if they were just kept for majors. I think that would be pretty cool. And I also think the key reason why is it would make it harder to win a major. You couldn't really have any more of a fluke in the final, etc. It would make you fail even more in the final. Like, for example, if Astralis got there okay and Device super choked and he had a really bad game for 3 out of 4 maps, let's really see that he's going to super choke. Let's not have it that he can go, oh, this one map I was off on and then they just read me well. No, let's see what happens over a full 4 maps. If you're going to succeed, I want you to succeed as much as you possibly can. If you're going to fail, let's see you fully fail. Let's see people actually collapse, and then let's see what happens to their story. So it's not that we're always wondering, oh, did they choke? Oh, what was going on there? Let's really see in that sense. Obviously, with more maps and final of majors, you're going to get more epic plays, you're going to get more epic games as well, so you can be selfish in that sense. Now, I understand as well another bad thing about them is they take a lot of time to run. Now, first and foremost, that's already something that actually can be solved by something which should be done anyway, in my opinion, which is even in best-of-3 finals. In my opinion, they should always be on a different day to the semi-finals. I think it's bullshit that you play 2 semi-finals and then the final on the same day. So the fact that tournament organisers get away with that at best-of-3, if anything, isn't a good excuse. A best-of-3 final should be on a separate day. Therefore, best-of-5 should be as well, in my opinion. And as a result, you can definitely run a best-of-5. You know, it takes like 5 or 6 hours at most on a whole day. There's no excuse for that, is there? So I think that's a not really a valid excuse. You've got the issue of the fact that people will say like the endurance factor and the stamina, I don't think that's as big a deal. Like people in League of Legends play best-of-5 finals. People in other games, I mean, we do it a little bit like with the semis and the final. People in other games play multiple series on one day, like Dota, etc. sometimes, especially in the international when you're in the lower bracket and then go to the final. I think the endurance thing is just overplayed by players. I think that's an excuse for not performing that well and for being someone who gets away with a good performance one day and then you have the next match you're not that good. I don't think it's that valid an excuse overall. I don't like the semis and finals being played on the same day because I want the final to have its own time and its own space to exist and not be at the end of a day when you played an exhausting game earlier like that in that particular sense. But I don't think it's as big a deal in that particular respect. And you're obviously playing different opponents in those ones, so it's different than playing just one opponent for 5 maps potentially. I also only want this for finals. Like in general, I would only want this to be in finals of any tournaments that's in. I don't want it for semis, etc. Like I thought it was too much when we had best of 5 at like Gfinity Civo Season 9, where we had like the Tempo Storm, now Immortals guys, beat VP in a best of 5. Okay, it was cool they beat them in a best of 5, but that was a bit of a drag in as much as like it's a bit of a mismatch. I mean, funnily enough, Tempo Storm did win it. This is when VP was slumping. And it's just not the final, is it? So it's not as important. Like I get that semis can sometimes be better than finals, but with all these other considerations, I think let's just go ahead and put it in finals first and see what we do from there. So personally, I want more finals to be best of 5.